Hello everyone, I'm EternalOpossum, and welcome back to Every Hell's Kitchen Chef Ranked. Last time we started the golden age of the show with Season 4, and now we're on to Season 5, which may consider one of the best seasons in the show's history unless you're IMDb. I'm definitely among those who do, as I feel this season is consistently entertaining, as pretty much every single episode there's something happening. Of course, a lot of that credit does go to the cast, which is definitely one of my favorites. Sure, there's some that I'm not crazy about, including two I just outright dislike, but overall, there's a lot more positives in this cast than the first 3 seasons. I don't know about Season 4, but who knows, maybe time will change. Before we go into this, just a reminder that there are some chefs I've talked about before, so if I don't talk about them that much, chalk it up to that, or me not having much to say about them. Jokes are not to be taken seriously, and real life stuff won't factor into their overall ranking. Only their edit on the show. I know I'm reviewing them, but they're still real people, so just keep that in mind. Anyway, with all that out of the way, let's rank every chef of Season 5.
I hate Andrea and Lacey.
You know, I really thought I had a guaranteed least favorite chef this season. I really thought I did. I thought it was pretty obvious who was going to be at the bottom spot of this list. But surprise, surprise, repeats of watching the season made me realize that Carol is actually the worst of the season. Carol is someone that first time watching the season I just found really bored for the most part. I never felt she stood out much aside from her conflict with Andrea and her final service. I was really hoping that rewatches would expose something of her that was more interesting, or at least something that made me kind of enjoy her. But no, literally the only thing she has going for her is the fact that she really hates Lacey and Andrea, and she makes it all the way to 7th place. To make matters worse, she's pretty much the one who causes the red team to be as divided as is. Like, you think the moment Lacey gets moved to the blue team, that's when the arguing on the red team stops? But no, not for Carol. Now she has to find someone else to yap about. And you know what? Andrea's probably the best choice. The worst part is that this makes Lacey right when she says she's not the issue on the red team. That honor belongs to Carol. I know some of you may be confused on why I dislike Carol so much, especially considering I have previously praised chefs like Corey, Jen, and even Sarah for their villainous actions. Well, the reason is because in some sort of way they feel like threats. They feel that if all the cards were in their favor, they could have a chance of winning. Carol, absolutely not. She never once comes off as a threat in any sort of way. She's either extremely mid or downright bad in the kitchen. No chance she has at winning at all. And she makes it all the way to 7th despite not even really deserving to make it that far. I guess the best thing about her is her elimination, but even then I feel that should have happened a season earlier. Carol sucks. I can't stand her.
I'm sick of taking shit from you people. It's stopping now. I quit.
Yeah, this shouldn't take long. Lacey's a common pick for many as the most annoying contestant to ever enter Hell's Kitchen. She barely goes through the very first episode before saying she wants to quit, and then for some reason can't figure out why her team hates her. Gee, I wonder why. She gets switched to the blue team after she burns her bridges with the red team, and actually does pretty damn well for her first 2 services with them, even managing to emerge as a leader. And now you think that maybe she used this opportunity to really stop thinking about the idea of quitting and try to be a team player. But nope! She's back to whining and complaining again the moment they lose a challenge. Thankfully, she doesn't last much longer as she does the best thing she does all season and get ejected in the final 9. I think I summed up Lacey pretty well here. Annoying as shit with her whining, got ejected, not much else to talk about, right? Well, I'm going to make a little analogy that I think perfectly sums up Lacey, or at the very least, my personal thoughts on Lacey. Let's say you bought a new game that you might be excited about, or at the very least interested in, but when you start playing the game, you realize that there's some really big issues that are so bad that any fun or good you might see in the game have been sapped. You then find out that it's not the game doing this, it's your PC. So you do some updates, maybe buy a few spare parts, put it together, and boom! Game runs better without those issues. And then one day, without warning, the game goes right back to its original problems, but now there's no reason for this to happen, and you eventually realize there's better games to play, so you uninstall it and never go back to it again. Lacey's pretty much the equivalent of PC problems. She can work in the kitchen, she can cook, she can even fucking lead. Hell, both times she's nominated on the red team is when she doesn't screw up. But then these issues keep cropping up that shouldn't be there in the first place. It makes sense only to the computer and no one else. Her own worst enemy is herself. Realistically, she's on the same level as Carol, but I would only prefer Lacey by a tiny bit because her first 2 episodes on the blue team weren't really that bad.
If I get kicked off because of you, I swear to God I'm coming after you, Lacey.
Okay, I'm gonna be real. Koi is absolutely nothing. She legitimately might be a contender for the least impactful chef in the show's history. She makes it all the way to the top 11, and the only thing she has to show for it is this one interaction with Lacey and joining in with the Andrea hate train. Like, fuck man, even for as much as I dislike Lacey and Carol, at least they did something memorable. Koi is literally nothing. I can't even go over a time in the show because it's nothing. Did I mention Koi is nothing?
I do not want a complaint of a 12-inch ginger pubic hair in someone's creme brulee.
Charlie, he existed. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know it may come off as in poor taste to talk a little about someone, especially since by the time this video comes out, they've actually died not long ago. But Charlie's just there. I guess I'll give him credit for being the first chef to be told to shave and mess it up as both a waiter and service, but he's around for 3 episodes and that's really all there is to him. I'm sorry.
I had to nominate myself. You know, you own up, you man up to it. It caught a few people by surprise.
Okay, so kind of a disclaimer here, but the next chef I'm about to talk about not only no longer goes by this name, but no longer identifies as a guy. I wasn't really sure how to address this without sounding really disrespectful, because trans rights do matter, but what I'm going to do is mention the dead name once, just so you know who I'm talking about, but throughout the rest of this segment, I'm going to refer to her with her current name and pronouns. Okay? Okay, let's talk about Will, aka Sarah. Sarah's admittedly not someone I have much to say about because she's the first boot. She seemed nice and was respected by her team to the extent that Robert said he'd rather have Sarah over Seth, but it turns out that her putting herself up was not a good idea. I kind of don't understand it, especially considering Petroza did something similar 1 season ago, but I guess Petroza gets a pass because Petroza wasn't in the firing lane and Ramsey had enough of Ben. So yeah, Sarah's nice, but because she's the first boot, she really isn't much.
This is a professional kitchen. If you want to fucking go, go. I'll fucking do everything.
I'm gonna be real, I have some odd feelings about Jay. I think he's kind of boring for the most part, although I think that's because he doesn't really stand out to me as much as a number of the other chefs on the blue team. I also felt like he had this main character syndrome sort of thing. Like, I remember in the first elimination ceremony, he had to clarify to Ramsey that Seth was the first nominee and Sarah was the second, and he said it like he was the most badass thing ever. Like, my guy, what's the difference? You're putting up the same 2 people. Plus, he has this habit of talking in third person, which I really didn't think was that much of an issue. I don't have a problem with it. I guess his elimination is pretty good, although I think Lacey's is better. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about Jay. He's okay, but overshadowed by more interesting chefs.
I'm telling you right now, I'm gonna fucking punch her in the face.
So, here's our first of several chefs that make it relatively far into the season, but I have very little to say about. Andrea's admittedly someone I've always had a tough time talking about because I really don't know what to say about her. Despite making it to the top 3, she's never been someone that I felt passionate about, either in a positive sense or negative sense. She's just Andrea. I guess I did side with her more than Carol, but that's only because Andrea's not threatening violence at all, and I guess it was interesting to see her fight her way to the final 3, even though she was insanely lucky to make it there. Like, she only barely survives the final 6 because Dickface had a meltdown, automatically made the top 4 because Robert had to depart, won immunity on her worst service yet, didn't do as poorly as Ben the following service, and then once she made the pass, she ran it like modern day Russia. She wasn't going to win, but man, she essentially rolled nat 20s every service to make it there. Yeah, that's about it for Andrea. She's just Andrea.
I teach manners too, Chef.
I'm not gonna lie, I weirdly enjoy Colleen a lot more than others do. Not exactly enough for me to say I like her unironically, but I think she's fine. She does start off pretty bad with a bad signature dish and a revelation that not only does she teach cooking when she doesn't cook herself, but she also teaches manners apparently. I wonder if she charges $300 for that too. From then on, however, despite being obviously the weakest chef in the kitchen, I don't know, I find her kind of charming. I respect the fact she works her ass off and doesn't lose her cool despite Ramsey absolutely hating her, Granted, there's one chef he put through more hell coming up later, but Colleen still did hold her temper. Plus, I think she's kind of funny in that confused grandma sort of way. She kind of reminds me of Aunt Susan from that TED show in a way. Unfortunately, that charm didn't keep her at Hell's Kitchen for long, as after 5 straight services where she was obviously the weakest chef, she was eliminated despite not being nominated. But yeah, I'm actually pretty okay with Colleen. There's others I like more, but I think she's pretty good for what she is.
He molested that poor thing. People have gone to jail for worse.
Much like Colleen beforehand, Seth is also a chef I have a weird enjoyment for, and the reason for it is very, very simple. I think he's funny. Not in the great quips kind of way, but kind of a dopey way. Come to think of it, Seth almost feels like a precursor to Raj in a way with how many funny moments he has in the season, as well as the fact that no one seems to like him that much. Seth doesn't seem to mind, however, as throughout his entire run he makes stupid mistake after stupid mistake. Of course, the biggest example of this is during the steakhouse service, where after running out of filet, Seth decides to practice his circumcision skills on it, to which Dickface sums up in a very graceful way. Unsurprisingly, the real-life Slapping the Dummies run runs out really fast after 4 terrible services, but not before leaving behind a legacy of ruined fillets, poorly understood sarcasm, and a hilarious, hilarious donkey.
I'm gay, that dude is parade gay.
Like Andrea, LA's a chef I never really felt too much attachment towards in terms of positivity or negativity. It's not that I find her boring, I think she's one of the better chefs, she has some pretty good lines. Overall, I like her. But that's really about it. I guess the thing I could talk about most when it comes to her is that I think her elimination is really silly. Like, Carol absolutely crashed that service and has been doing nothing but mess up, so she really should be gone. But no, LA gets eliminated because she's apparently not creative? Well, I guess Scribblenauts isn't the game for her. Yeah, that's about it for LA. She's fine overall, not much else.
You, madam.
Yes, I've been phenomenal.
Thank you, chef.
A talented girl, but unfortunately, due to the circumstances, it's not fair to continue going on under that amount of pain.
Now this is going to be interesting. I feel a lot of people expected G to at least be in the top 5, especially considering how popular she is in the community. Well, she's close, and I mean, I do like her, but there's just one big issue with her that I feel kind of hurts her. She pretty much enters Hell's Kitchen as the favorite. She's got a strong signature dish, probably the best of the day, and unlike many other chefs on the red team, she's a lot more understanding and patient towards Lacey. Overall, a pretty good start. Then she slips on some oil and injures her leg the following episode, and while she does go through service and doesn't make any errors, ultimately the pain is too much and she decides to leave so she doesn't bring the team down. This also leads to a first in the series where Ramsey allows the chef to keep their jacket, and the teams give her a rousing applause in what may consider to be one of the most tragic eliminations in the show's history. I may not be one of those people. Look, for the brief time we knew G, I liked her. I thought she was super likable and really felt like she had a shot at winning it. But the thing is that she's around for 2 episodes. I feel that if I got to know her longer, I'd feel more emotional about her exit. It's sad, definitely, but I feel like there's sadder eliminations out there. So yeah, I do like G, quite a bit actually, but because she's gone so early and the others I'm about to talk about just, I feel, do more for me, she's kinda stuck here.
Yeah, but I'm not Dickface, chef.
I know I'm sounding like a broken record at this point, but much like Andrea and LA beforehand, Giovanni for the longest time was someone I really struggled to talk about because I never felt passionately positive or negative about him. Hell, I even struggled to wonder why he was brought back for All-Stars because I felt that outside of what he's best known for, I really didn't know what stood out about him. Paying more attention to him, however, I think there's quite a bit to like about Giovanni. Admittedly, he does start pretty bad, having 2 nomination-worthy performances, but barely managed to avoid it because of some reason. After those 2 performances, however, he starts to improve, even getting named Best of the Worst in the 5th episode, although, hot take, Lacey kinda deserved it more. His good performances continue after being switched to the red team, and he pretty much becomes the mediator in the whole Carol and Andrea division on the red team. With his leadership and improved skills in the kitchen, as well as him being generally likable and honestly having some of the best quotes of the season, he might have a shot. Black Jackets, however, is where Giovanni goes from sleeper pick to win to absolutely crumbling. And of course, this is where I need to talk about the dick face incident. Giovanni fucks up Ben's dish a lot, Ramsay calls him dick face, Giovanni says he's not, Ramsay gets mad, pawn to king 4. Is without a doubt one of the greatest moments in Hell's Kitchen, as well as one of the biggest meltdowns from a single contestant. Unsurprisingly, Dickface does get eliminated that episode for his numerous mistakes. Yeah, I'll admit that Giovanni I did write off for a while, and I think it's mainly because I couldn't remember much about him outside the Dickface incident, but outside of that, I think he's pretty good. I definitely see why he was brought back for All-Stars now.
Coming in second place in Hell's Kitchen is definitely not going to stop me. There's so many doors are going to open up.
You know, out of everyone on this list, I think the one that was the hardest to really talk about in a season full of chefs I had a tough time talking about previously was definitely Paula. Don't get me wrong, I do like her quite a bit. I like that aside from Giovanni, she's the chef on the red team talking the most truth, especially when it comes to Carol. I also think that she's a very deserving finalist, and I think that Paula and Danny is one of the best final two in Hell's Kitchen, solely because it's the first real nail-biter of the series, where it feels like anyone could come out on top. At the same time, however, I do find her kind of boring. Not boring enough to say I would prefer chefs like LA and Giovanni over her, but I don't think she's the most interesting. I think the best way to describe Paula for me is someone I enjoy solely because I like seeing them cook. Don't get me wrong, there are some pretty great dishes this season, but I think Paula's dishes were the first that made me take note of them. Like goddamn, there's some really good looking dishes there. But yeah, I like Paula more even though I feel there are more interesting chefs in the season.
Dude, does it look like I eat fucking pea tendrils?
Robert's always been a chef I really liked. Hell, back when I made my first Hell's Kitchen video, I put Robert as an honorable mention in my top 10 favorite Hell's Kitchen chefs from seasons 1 through 9. The main reason for this is because I feel he's a very diverse chef when it comes to moments. He can be very funny in some of his confessionals, he can have some pretty badass moments where he's just super likable. Overall, I consider one of the most entertaining chefs to ever enter Hell's Kitchen. Sure, there's moments of him I do kind of dislike, like I feel his comments about Lacey being fat are pretty damn hypocritical, especially considering he's built like a leg cramp, but at the same time Lacey doesn't really help herself, so yeah. I also do find him to be a downright tragic chef. I know I could bring up his talk with Ramsay about his father, which I think is another one of the greatest moments in the show's history, but man, his exit is heartbreaking. The dude really was the glue on the blue team for the most part, and while I don't think he had a chance at winning, I feel he could have had a pretty good shot on the pass. It's this, as well as the factors I mentioned above, as to why I think Robert's departure is sadder than G's. But yeah, I really like Robert, still one of my favorites. As for his season 6 appearance, we'll get to it.
I will put circles around you. I will circle you like a fucking moon. Where have you been? Are you joking me?
What?
You couldn't cook my cock.
I'm not gonna lie, if there's anyone who I feel is severely underrated in my mind when it came to chefs I adore, it's definitely Ben. I do remember liking him the first time I watched the season, but that was really about it. I think it's because as I kept watching seasons, Ben just kinda slipped my mind. But now that I got a fresh view of Ben, I have to say that he's unironically one of my favorites in the pre-season 10 era, to the extent I would probably put him in my top 30 chefs of all time. The dude is admittedly kind of smug about his abilities, really overconfident as well, and granted there's occasions where he can back up his ego, but it's definitely entertaining to see him be overconfident as shit, and then immediately mess up if we're going to tear him a new one. Speaking of which, Jesus Christ! I mentioned earlier there was someone that Gordon put through more hell than Colleen, and this is that someone. Literally, whenever Gordon yells at him, I get the feeling it's not just normal anger. I get the feeling that he's going to take Ben out back and shoot him dead. Maybe you know something we don't. Like, maybe Ben from the last season snuck back in. There are still a lot of great sides to Ben, however. Like, despite him having an ego, you can tell his heart is in the right place. He works his ass off for Danny in the finals, even though they argued earlier on in the season. And even when Lacey's being whiny as usual, he's calm and collected with her, trying to break through to her. It makes me really appreciate him more because you can tell he's trying his hardest. And combine that with how much shit Gordon puts him through, and you have someone that really deserves a whole lot more love than he gets. Also, I think he just has a lot, I mean a lot, of great expressions.
A lot of chefs get up here and they say, you know, this is all that they know how to do. You know what? Fuck that, chef. This is all I want to do.
Well, this shouldn't be a surprise. My favorite chef this season just so happens to be one of my all-time favorite winners. It just makes sense. I did already talk about my favorite winners list though, so I'll try to keep it brief. But essentially, I really like Danny for his growth. He does start out cocky and not exactly the greatest, but he does have potential in him, something that starts to emerge more and more as the season progresses. At the same time, his cockiness does start to decrease throughout the season, although it does still remain. But unlike Ben, his ego is way more justified because Danny is genuinely strong in the kitchen, and pretty much the frontrunner for the guys. All this leads up to what I mentioned earlier is the first real nail-biter of Hell's Kitchen finals, as he and Paula are pretty much neck and neck. Ultimately, it's Danny who does come out the victor with one of the best winner reveals in the show's history. It's Danny's growth from egotistical loudmouth who can't back it up just yet to matured chef with a slight ego that makes him not only my favorite of the season, but one of my all-time favorite winners. Well, there we are. Every chef from season 5 ranked. Admittedly, there's a lot of chefs I don't have much to say about, mostly because they're just very okay to me. That's not a bad thing per se, because even if I don't have a lot to say about them, I do like them. Anyway, here's the final grades for season 5's cast. And that'll be it for me. If you want to see more videos like this, feel free to like and subscribe. But until then, I'll see you in the next video. EternalOpossum out.